Hello Generals, today we're going to talk about the first tier and what tanks you should buy, which vehicles, and why that, so you don't waste your cash after playing so many big games. Let's start with each classification, starting with main battle tanks. The main battle tanks, we have the gold tanks. There are two tanks, the T55 AMD1 and WZ120C. We'll talk about them later on. But what the benefit if it gives the gold tanks is 20% cash no matter you win or lose. After each match you will get 20% more cash. Now let's talk about the other tanks that's only for cash, that everyone can buy it. M41 Bulldog. It's a decent tank, but it cannot be competitive a lot for high tiers and as you play the match more and more, because it doesn't have the armor that can protect you in the battle. The armor is not very reliable, so it's much better to avoid this tank. I will not talk about that tank a lot. Let's talk about the three tanks. They are so similar, so identical, and they are so what I have to say, they are just brothers. They are all the same, all have the same armor. Now let's talk about the WZ121. It has more damage but less penetration, so it has its own playstyle. If you know the enemy's weak points, you can pick the WZ121. The WZ120 and the T55A, they are much more similar, unlike the WZ121. For me, I like the WZ121 because it has the playstyle of knowing the enemy's weak points. See, we have 10,000 damage and 185 millimeters of penetration. That's not very well. I mean, 185, it's not so much. Here we have 236 millimeters of penetration. But this tank is not fully upgraded. Let's see the upgrade one, the WZ120, and it has 8,000 damage. That's 2,000 less than the other tank, and 236 more penetration here. Here there is about 50 millimeters of more penetration. That's the can destroy the armor of the enemy tank and penetrate it. So if you want to be more a hold down tank, pick the WZ120, because you're not going to move a lot. Unlike the WZ121, you will move a lot because you are searching for the weak points of the enemy. But there is a high reward. There is 2,000 more damage that you will get from the enemies, because you have more damage but less penetration. So it depends on your playstyle. Don't listen to anyone else. It's all the similar. Now let's talk about the whole rotation speed. 36 degrees. And it is like 36 degrees to the left or right by 1 second. You can move it, and tower rotation is similar. Gun elevation angle, the -9. That -9 is real nice, because the more minus is it, that means more capability of putting down the gun. That's mean better. 18, it's gonna be struggle to against the aircraft and the helicopters. Mass and kilograms, it helps you only with the ramming. That's the numbers only. The higher is it, the more capable to farming the enemies. Clocking, it helps you to be undetected by the aircraft and the enemy's tanks by 50%, 15%. I mean, 15. It's a little bit, not so much, but that's good after upgrading it, of course. So about these three tanks, they are all similars, not so much difference. The armor all the same. Which tank you should pick? It depends on you. Don't listen about anyone else that say this tank is better than this tank. It depends on your play style, how you like to play. You know the enemy's weak points. Pick the WZ121. You don't know it, you want to have more penetration, more reliable gun that you can penetrate but less damage, you'll pick any one of the other two options. Now we move on. Starting with the T55 AMD1. This tank has more armor, like 441 effective armor and 250 millimeters base armor. So it's really good armor. But if the enemies has more penetration, it's gonna penetrate it all the time. So it's if the enemies like have 500 or 600 millimeters, it's gonna be penetrated all the time. It's a good armor tank, good armored vehicle, and I bought it and I really enjoy it. And you can buy it. Unlike the WZ-120C, it has reactive armor, but the main armor is much weaker than the armor that has the T55 AMD1. The reactive armor helps you even in the high tier, because no matter the shell is gonna fired at you, the reactive armor will do its job. But keep in mind, the more you fight in the battle, the more you lose the reactive armor, the more the main armor of the tank will be exposed, and you will be penetrated all the time because the main armor is not very strong. Here in the T55 AMD has a protection system, and it's really helpful against missiles. Unlike the WZ-120C, it doesn't have it. So for me, I rather the T55 AMD one, but as I told you, the WZ-120C can fight in all tiers. It doesn't matter because it has reactive armor, but after like a couple of fighting, it will lose the armor that has. Now we move on to vehicles. At first, the best vehicles. We have lots of vehicles. The best vehicles to use is BMP1, and you can use the LAV 25 and the LAV 150 just to enjoy the match with annoying the people with drones and something like that. These are the only tanks I can tag and the vehicles I can talk about. Here we have the missile carriers, CM25. It's with gold, of course, and it's a decent armor. Even if it says it's low damage, low armor, 70 millimeters. But remember, as I told you in the past video, there is a little detail that says damage to part 50%. So no matter the shells hit your tank, it's going to be lowered down by 50%. That's amazing. This vehicle has a missile, and the missile can penetrate almost all the tanks. Does it worth it 1,100? Well, it depends on you and what gold you have. It's a good tank. It's a good vehicle, actually. You can use it. Here we have the anti-aircraft. I don't recommend to buy any one of them. I got those from the spinning wheel. It's a decent, but it's not for aircraft actually. It's more for tanks. It's to attack the tanks from high distance, and it's useful because it has a good accuracy. It's a great one, but I don't recommend to spend the cash for it. Save it for better options for higher tier. Here we have the armor of it, but the turret has damage to parts 50%. So if you face someone of these tanks, fire on the whole armor of the tanks. Don't fire on the turret, because the turret will absorb about 50% of the damage you're firing it. If you're doing like 50,000, it's gonna be like only 7,500. Now let's talk about last classification of the tanks, and it is the tank destroyer. We have the T-14 and Su-152 Taran. T-14 is autoloader. It's not like the Su. It has 3 shells. The heat shells are very powerful and can destroy the modules very easy. It can easily armor rack. But it's really, the armor is real weak, and it doesn't have that amazing thing that's called damage to parts. So it makes it very vulnerable, and it's really easy to destroy it. Same thing with the Su-152. It's just a little bit, the armor is not very helping, and it cannot bounce anything. But the Su-152 has a drone that has 2 missiles, heat missiles. You can only make the range bigger, but you can't make it the missiles much more stronger. The T-14, you can buy the anti-fragment and upgrade it, so you can avoid being one shot by HE shells, and models will be more sustainable in the fight. So if you have to buy one of them, I'll recommend T14 because you have 3 shells to fire before you're out of shells, and you will destroy the targets if you upgrade the shell you're firing. So if you have spare gold, you can buy the T14 just to get 20 cash more. See you guys.